Alright, so now that we're familiar with the preferences inside Photoshop, let's look at the interface itself. And this is what we're looking at now. When you launch the program, this is what appears on your screen. So I just want to kind of go take a quick tour and break down all the various parts that we're looking at here. We're going to start at the very top here. And we have our various main menus. We have the File menu, Edit, Image, Layer, Select, Filter, Analysis, 3D. Now the analysis in 3D are only going to be appearing in Photoshop CS4 Extended. So if you do have that version of Photoshop, then you will also have these menus. If you have the standard version, these won't be here. Now, of course, we have the View and Window menus. Now, each one has its own properties. File determines a lot of the file behaviors and saving files and stuff like that, various edit features, and we're certainly going to cover these throughout the course, but I just want to give you an idea of what is where. The Image determines a lot of adjustments and various resolution and color spaces and things like that. That's where you determine. The Layer menu is very involved with all kinds of various options for managing your layers. Select menu determines and edits selections that you create. Filter menu, this is a whole lesson in and of itself. Filters are very involved effects that you can apply to your images to enhance them, create visual effects, do illustrated effects, various things like that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later in the course. The analysis is for medical professionals where they can determine and set up various measurements for medically based images like DICOM and such like that. But unless you're a medical professional, this really isn't relevant. So we're going to move right along to the 3D. Again, this 3D feature is only available in Photoshop CS4, but unlike the previous version of CS3, 3D is a bit more involved now. They did introduce Photoshop or 3D in Photoshop CS3, and if you've used that version at all, you'll notice that the 3D features were very limited. But now in Photoshop CS4, we have considerable number of new tools for working with 3D. The View menu determines how your images are viewed inside Photoshop. You can do the zooming, set up your screen modes, and show guides, grids, everything like that. The Window menu opens up all the various panels that are located in Photoshop. And you'll notice by default, a couple of them are already on. Panels that are on, or anything that's active, will have a check mark next to it, as you can see right here. So the color panel is open, the layers, the application frame. So all these various windows are open. And to open any panel that isn't open, just simply select it. So if I go in here and choose Actions, you'll see that it pops up. Now notice what it did. It popped out of what it's called a group, a tab group. So jumping right along, we're going to talk about panels now, is that you'll notice all these panels are tabbed. So you can click on each tab and it will open up that particular panel. Some of these panels are grouped and you're able to detach them out of their existing group. So if I just grab this in this open area here and drag it out to my document, it basically removes it from the dock and is now a free-floating panel. You can still access each one of these panels. You can even remove panels from their existing panel groups and make them individual panels. You can also minimize these down to icons by clicking these small little arrows in the top, just like that, to minimize the area that the panel occupies. It still keeps the panel open, but it minimizes your screen area so you can work a little bit better. And to access them, you simply click on it. It opens up temporarily, and you just click the arrow and it pops back in. And all these can be redocked right back into your panels just by dragging it over, and you see it highlights at the bottom there indicating that it's about to be docked in there, and there you have it. And just simply minimize that. So it's a quick and easy way of managing how the panels can be grouped, ungrouped, moved around, everything like that. Now, you got a similar thing going on with your documents. Now, you'll notice I've got an image open here, and this is something new to CS4. If you've used previous versions, this is something a little different. Like the tabs, similar to the way the tabs work in your panels, you also have tabs in your documents. So I've got two documents open here, and just by simply clicking on one, it will open that particular document. Going back over here, jumping back in between them. Now, if I want to rearrange the order here, I can simply drag this over, and you'll see that they switch places. So if you have more than two documents, if you've got 5, 6, 7 documents, you can rearrange them similar to the way you rearrange panels. You do the same thing over here. You just drag and move the panels around. So it's a good thing to know that you can do this with panels because you're probably not going to use every panel. Depending on what kind of work you do in Photoshop, you may be a photographer, you may be a 3D artist, you may be a video professional. Now, if you are, this is where the concept of workspaces comes into play. Now, what is a workspace? Well, workspace is if you go into the window menu and you go into this menu right here and you see we've got workspaces. A workspace is basically an arrangement of your interface. Basically, you can set up panels, put them in particular positions. You can even set up keyboard shortcuts and various things like that, and then save that workspace so you can bring it back whenever you need it if you're going to work in a specific field. Now, Photoshop has come prepackaged with a number of workspaces that are conducive to specific workflows. If you go under the window menu and you go to that flyout menu, you'll notice right now we're working in the Essentials default workspace. And I did move some stuff around, so if I reselect this, it's going to rearrange those panels back to the way they were. So now we're back to the original default workspace. But under that workspace menu, we have other things. You have the very basic functions, which it basically... Now, here's the thing. If you're accessing workspaces for the first time, it's going to give you this. The selected workspace will modify menu and or keyboard shortcuts. We'll go ahead and hit yes. And it will take us to a very basic workspace. As you can see right here, it's basically minimized all the panels. They're still open, but it's given us more screen area, and all we have to do is click on each one to open it up. Other workspaces available are, here's a very good one. Again, if you're brand new to Photoshop, or if you're not new, you've worked on previous versions, and you want to have a look at what's new in CS4, simply highlight that. And I'm going to go ahead and tell this not to show me this again. Let's go ahead and click yes. What this does is it highlights all the new features in your menus and all things like that. So everything that's highlighted blue is something new inside this version of Photoshop. And they've done this with the previous versions of Photoshop. So what's new in CS3 has got it, various things like that. And just below that, we've got a number of categories for different types of workflows. Let's say if you're a 3D artist, you can choose the 3D workspace, and it will bring up the 3D panel, as you can see. It's got the layers panel. And you have workspaces for painting, analysis, color and tone if you're doing color correction on a number of different photographs. So these are quick and easy ways to get used to. There's a video workspace, which brings up the animation panel. So as I mentioned, these are prepackaged workspaces that are available right away inside Photoshop. So if you go in here into the workspace, and you'll notice you have another option down here at the bottom called Save Workspace. As I mentioned earlier, we can go in here and decide, open up certain panels and rearrange them however we want to do it. And then we have the option of saving that workspace as our own. And that will show up also inside the workspace menu here after you've saved it. You can also delete your workspaces as well. So instead of having a lot of unnecessary panels open or certain things functioning that you don't really need depending on what you're doing in Photoshop, this is a good way to manage that and to be able to access it. Now, another way of accessing it is inside the application frame. Up here in the top corner, you've got this quick little window to quickly access all those various workspaces that we could just we're just able to get into. Now, a couple more things I want to talk about the interface. Now, this is the toolbar over here on the side. I did forget to mention that, but on the next lesson, I'm actually going to talk about the tools and the tools options a little bit more in detail. But I just want to show you that this toolbar, again, like the panels, can be moved and drag out. You can also, if you remember from earlier versions of Photoshop, if you've used them before, it had a double column toolbar, which you can still do. If you click this little arrow, it'll actually bring your toolbar into a two-column scenario. So depending on the size of your screen, or if you're just like working in this particular way, you can do that. They did go ahead and make it a single column, again, to give you more screen space for your images. Now, all the various tools and their options are located in the options bar, appropriately enough, at top. Notice when you select the tool, it changes up there. But again, as I mentioned, we're going to get more in depth on the tools and their options in the next lesson. Now, one last thing I want to show inside Photoshop CS4, and this is something brand new. Now, if you've been working in Photoshop on a PC for some time, then this will be nothing new to you. But new to the Mac version of Photoshop, in fact, I'm going to take my workspace back to the Essentials. New to the Mac version of Photoshop is something called an application frame. Under the window menu down here, you can see it's checked on. What it is basically is it contains the entire application in a single window. So if I go over here down to the bottom and grab the corner and resize it, you can notice that everything stays contained in one convenient window. So I can resize this for the purposes of recording, like I'm doing right now. It makes it easier to consolidate everything into one simple window that I can resize and not have a bunch of scattered panels everywhere. The beauty of this inside the Mac version of Photoshop is that it's optional. If you go into the window menu, you can go down here and turn it off. By unchecking that, now we're back to the way Photoshop was once before, where we just have we can see our desktop right behind the windows, and everything looks great. This is actually the way I like to work. I'm not a big fan of the application frame, but in certain circumstances, it can be a big help. So, There's a quick overview of the entire interface of Photoshop and how you access certain functions. And we're going to be using these features throughout the rest of the course, but I just wanted to give you a quick little here's where this is located type of thing. Now, in the next lesson, as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the tools and the toolbar and the options that go with it.